Hello everybody, I'm Happy Face, and welcome to my Hollow Knight boss ranking. Now, I may be a little bit negative about these first few bosses because as much as I love this game, there are like 2 or 3 bosses in this game that I really dislike. Second thing, this is just my opinion. I'm sure there will be disagreements in this list, and that's a good thing. Bosses that are dependent on how the player experienced the game versus bosses that are just objectively good or objectively bad are absolutely wonderful, and I think that every boss should be like that. And the last thing before I get into the ranking is actually about the game. Now, there's a lot of bosses in this game, and some of them are repeats. There are dream versions of some of the earlier game bosses, and I didn't really want to include all of those for the sake of repetitiveness, so I just included the harder boss in 90% of these situations. Hopefully that will make it so that the video goes a little bit smoother, and there's not a lot of, oh, well, this is just a harder version of this boss. Let's jump into the ranking with number 35, Absolute Radiance. Now, I don't really have an issue with the first phase other than that he can spawn over some of the spikes. I think all of the attacks are fine, and I don't really hate any of them in particular. I just find them all to be somewhat okay. But the second phase is where I really dislike this fight. Him spawning in places where it is downright impossible to hit him without taking damage is just stupid. It makes the phase drag out so much longer than it needs to. But the real problem is the climb. Now, the climb itself I don't think is a problem. In the regular Radiance fight, I actually don't mind it. My issue with it is that it's just there to lower your health for the final phase, which I actually think is cool. It's like this little bit of a last stand where he only does one attack. That's such an interesting idea. The problem is getting there with more than 1 HP from the stupid climb is just awful. I also just have this overwhelming sense of anger when I'm fighting this boss. I just hate it so much. And finally, who in their right mind thought it was a good idea to make this boss run back be 45 minutes? What was the thought process here? What was the point? Dude, I already hated that the final boss of the Pantheons were way harder than all the other ones, but this is just ridiculous. And number 34 is Grey Prince Zote, and I have 2, maybe 3 big issues with this fight. Number 1, ads and boss fights. I think these are really stupid, and I never liked any boss that had ads in it. The second thing is that he just walks into you. I find this to be such an irritating thing about this game, and most games that have the entire boss be a hitbox, is that they'll just walk into you and damage you. Like, it just leaves a bad taste in my mouth that I didn't do anything wrong, but I still got hit just because I was standing close to him. Like, how else am I supposed to do damage? But on the positive, I do find this boss to be incredibly goofy, so it's not all bad. And number 33 is Umu, and my hate for this boss can be summed up really easily. RNG. You either get her to do a bunch of lightning attacks in a row when you literally can't do anything, or she spawns jellyfish within the first 2 attacks and they're really easy to hit. It's a super easy boss fight if you get good luck, but I've actually found myself dying to this boss before because I get incredibly awful luck. I just really don't like a system that works like that, and I just find this to be one of the most annoying bosses in the game. This is also a good time to mention that I'm going off of the Pantheon versions, considering that's what I have the most experience with. I actually think the main game version is really fun. Waiting around for Coral can be a little bit annoying, but it will never have to be the RNG mess that is this fight in the Pantheons, so I would actually put it a little bit higher if I wasn't ranking based off that. At number 32 is Vengefly King, and really all I can say about this fight is that it's boring. It spawns ads during the boss fight, I don't like that, and standing around and waiting for him to charge just sucks. It's not interesting to fight, and it's just a mundane battle of sitting there and getting one hit off every 20 seconds or so. At number 31 is Markoth, and I'm gonna say it, I actually kind of like the normal version of this fight. I think that waiting around for him to get close to you is kind of annoying, but you can kind of just sit in the corner and move left and right, and it's not that much of a problem. My problem with this fight is someone thought it would be really funny if they just removed the floor. This makes it so that there's almost no way to consistently dodge his attacks, and if he gets close to you, you're just screwed. Yeah, maybe you can get a hit off on him if the shield is in a lucky spot, but it's just annoying. Most of the other new arenas for the Dream Warriors I think are actually better, but this one is just awful. At number 30 is Flukmarm, and yes, this boss spawns ads and is absolutely terrible. That's literally all it does. However, I do get a little bit of fun out of smacking the crap out of this stupid cocoon and then beating it to death with Abyss Shriek. So because of that, I had to put it a little higher than these other bosses. At number 29 is Marmu, and this boss you literally just swing your sword up. Now at the time of recording this footage I had no idea that's what you were supposed to do, but once I figured it out this fight just became completely free. You literally have to do nothing except just hold the up button and press R1, that's it. But like I said with Flukmarm, this fight is actually kind of fun. Pogoing this bouncy ball off the ceiling is hilarious, so I'll give it that. Massive Moss Charger is very similar to Marmu, except you just swing your sword to the side instead of up. It's still a pretty fun fight, but I'm just going to let it play out. At number 27 is Oblobbles, and really my biggest problem with this boss is that I feel like it should be really easy, but it's not for me, and that makes me really angry. I just suck at this boss, plain and simple, that's it. I don't mind the fight. I think it's a little bit bullet hell-like, especially when both of them are close to each other, but otherwise it's not that bad. I am. At number 26, we have Gorb, and we're finally out of the bosses that I dislike. I just think Gorb is an incredibly mid-tier, boring boss fight. That's not necessarily a bad thing. He can be interesting. I just find that him only having really one attack that just involves moving one step to the left or right is not that interesting. Number 25 is Gruzmother, and again, this is just a simple boss. For early game, again, that's not a bad thing. I just, compared to the other bosses, it's not that great. The attacks are all fine, and they're pretty fun to dodge. It's not even that bad when you get the P5 arena, and frankly, just an overall solid boss fight. At number 24 is Elderhu, finally, a fight that I actually enjoy. I actually really like dodging his attacks. I think that all of them are very fun with or without Shade Cloak. My only issue, which is what brings him down, is that he can do the attack where he disappears infinite amounts of times in a row. One time I had a fight where he did it 7 times in a row. That's like a minute and a half of just standing there doing nothing, waiting for him to do something. I think that is the only reason this fight is really that bad. Yes, it's basic, but it's still really fun. And I think it's even better if you don't have Shade Cloak, because you actually have to stand in the correct place. But even with the Shade Cloak, pressing the dash button at the right time can feel really satisfying. So overall, really solid fight. Number 23 is Soul Warrior, and again, this is just a pretty basic fight. This is one time where I think spawning ads is actually a little bit more interesting since how basic he is. It makes it a lot more fun that you actually have something to focus on other than just his really simple attacks. But simple attacks isn't a problem. He has 3 attacks, they're all unique, they can all catch you out if you're not paying attention, and it's just overall not an awful fight. This is another fight that I'm just going to let play out because pulling this off perfectly is so satisfying and I can't describe it. Zero is yet another Dream Warrior boss that has only 1 attack, but I actually find this one to be really fun to play. Dodging toward him makes it so that you'll almost always dodge the attack and be able to get hits off, which is super satisfying to do. However, when you can't do it, it can be a little bit annoying because you kind of just have to sit there, but that's not bad enough for me to lower this boss anymore. At number 20 is Brothers Oro and Matto, and my biggest issue with this fight is how their aggro works. If you're standing on the outskirts of them, just like at the edge of the arena, only one of them will attack you at a time, and it's super easy. But if you stand in between them, it's almost impossible to not get hit because they're both constantly attacking you with attacks that are way bigger than you can dodge. The other issue is that they're basically just a rip-off version of the Watcher Knights, except with slightly different attacks. The main thing that differentiates them from Watcher Knights is the nail arts, but I feel like they don't really add much to the fight. Compared to the other 2 nail art users, the nail arts there just feel a lot more creatively used, as where here it's just the basic nail art that you get from them. At number 19 is God Tamer, and I really like fighting the god. I find the acid spits and the rolls to be really fun to deal with, but the Tamer is super annoying. Every single time I'm trying to hit the god, she just jumps in and breaks up the fight. It makes it take so much longer than I feel like it needs to, and just makes it kind of boring overall. It can be really annoying when she's attacking you right near the end of the fight, and the worst thing is if she does an attack as you kill the god, she can finish the attack. So if you're sitting there trying to heal for the next fight in the Pantheon, she can still hit you, which is just stupid. However, as much as I hate the Tamer part of the fight, like I said earlier, the god is actually really interesting, and I find jumping over his rolls to be really satisfying. At number 18 is Brooding Moloch, and I either really love this fight or really hate this fight, depending on if there's that stupid little platform in the middle. Having to jump to hit him is awful because his claw swipes are so fast, but in Pantheon 5 there isn't that platform there, so I actually end up really enjoying the fight. I find dodging attacks that are above you to be a really fun way to deal with things, and the rest of his attacks seem pretty fair to deal with, so I can't really hate on Moloch unless there's that stupid platform in the middle. At number 17 is Galleon, and despite being a really basic dream boss, I really enjoy this fight. I find that dodging the Scythe's weird movement patterns is really interesting, and the fact that he just spawns more throughout the fight is a really cool way to deal with things. I do think he's a little bit too easy if you have a full soul meter when you start, and or you're really good at using Abyss Shrieks, but otherwise it's a really solid fight. Now this is how you use enemies in a boss fight. Collector is actually really fun because she herself doesn't do that much, but the enemies can be really difficult and annoying if you don't deal with them. So it makes the main focus of the fight actually be the ads while having an easy boss on the side. I think this is a wonderful way to do enemies during a boss fight, and I actually really enjoy this fight because of that. At number 15 is Feld Champion, and because this boss is so fast, it feels really satisfying to dodge his attacks. I don't really have a ton to say about this fight since it's pretty simple, but it's a really solid boss. And number 14 is No Eyes, and this fight is solely here because of the atmosphere. It is absolutely incredible. The fight I just find to be so fun because of that. Is it a really good fight? No, it's super basic and not that interesting. But it's just so atmospheric and fun to fight that I just couldn't put. At number 13 is White Defender, and let me get my one problem out of the way first. Yeah, you heard me right, there's only one problem with this boss, and that is when he pounds his chests near the end of the fight and starts doing the burrow attack like 5 times in a row, there's not really much damage that you can do, and it just feels kind of like a desperation move before he dies, and I just find that to not be that interesting. Otherwise, though, this fight is fantastic. The sound effects are wonderful, the attack timings are great, and really I have no problems with it. He's not too fast, not too slow, everything feels fair. I do know that there's a cheese you can do by knocking him in the air over and over again when he's in a ball, but I don't think that would necessarily lower the fight because I've tried to do it before and it's not easy. At number 12 is Traitor Lord, and this is probably the most satisfying boss to fight in the entire game. It's so fast and fluent, and again, I'm just going to let it play out. Nosk has 2 different arenas that you fight him in, and both of them are absolutely wonderful. The one you're seeing here is the one that you fight in the normal game, where there's a little platform in the middle, and I absolutely love this. It creates such a sense of fear as you're hiding behind these little platforms waiting for him to charge by and having to deal with him. I think that's so interesting. And then, once you fight him in the Pantheons and you have to face him head on with nothing to hide behind, it makes it feel like so empowering that you finally be able to take down this challenge. His attacks are actually really cool to dodge. The charges, no matter if you're pogoing or hiding under a wall, are both really interesting. And my only real issue is that sometimes he'll just jump directly onto your head and there's not much warning for it. But otherwise, it's an absolutely amazing fight. And number 10 is Lost Kin, and I know I'm sounding redundant by this point, but really the only problem I have with this boss is that it spawns a bunch of ads. This is probably the worst offender in the entire game, considering this thing spawns so many balloons, but the attacks are actually really fun, and they're not too difficult to deal with, despite it being a harder boss, so it makes it so you can actually focus on the ads, which I do like. And the greatest change that this boss made on Broken Vessel was he got rid of the annoying headbanging attack in the center of the screen. Not only did that make the Broken Vessel fight end in 1 second when he did it, but it also was just super annoying to deal with if you didn't know that you can just kill him when he does it. Thankfully, they removed that in this fight, and it makes the fight not only more difficult, but also more enjoyable. At number 9 is Soul Tyrant, and as usual, I'll get my problems out of the way first. Number 1 is he does teleport pretty fast. There are some times we'll try to go hit him and he teleports way too quickly, and other times we'll just be like, oh, he's going to teleport away, and then he doesn't, and then you end up missing a hit. I find this to be kind of annoying, and it makes the fight drag on a little bit, but it's not enough for me to bring it down. The other thing is the second phase after you kill him is just kind of boring. I think that doing the same attack over and over again when you can't hit him is just stupid, and then sitting there and shooting spells afterwards to make up for it just isn't that interesting to me. But otherwise, I think this is a wonderful boss. I always really enjoyed base game Soul Master, and I thought the atmosphere was amazing, and I think the same thing here. This is an absolutely wonderful adaptation on the boss fight by just making it a little bit harder and a little bit faster. At number 8 is Watcher Knights, and for the first time on this list, I'm going to say I don't have a problem with this boss. I genuinely just think that there are 7 better bosses in this game. I find that starting out by fighting one Watcher Knight is amazing, letting you learn the moveset a little bit while not being under too much pressure, and then immediately it ramps up by having 2 on your screen at once. But unlike some other boss fights in other games that would just have them be on a timer, only when you kill one does another one spawn, which is amazing. It means that there's always 2 on your screen, but there's never more than 2, so you can't get overwhelmed, but you're never underwhelmed. This is an absolutely amazing way to do a boss fight like this, and them having simple attacks isn't necessarily a bad thing considering you have to deal with two at once and there's so many of them that are respawning. It's more of an endurance test than a difficult battle of skill, and I really like that. I think that the attacks are super fun to deal with, especially the rolling and the stomping one, but the sword swings aren't bad too. I think they're really fun to dodge, and you can find a good pattern to kill these guys. Absolutely 10 out of 10 boss. At number 7 is Paintmaster Shio, and again, I really enjoy this boss. I think that this is how you use the nail art better, making it so that he has the paint globs come off of his sword when he does it and then fall from the ceiling, makes it so you don't just have to dodge the basic slash like you did with the other brothers. I also really like the all attacks have paint globs coming off of them as little extra added things you have to deal with. It just makes it so that the fight's really interesting, and you have to dodge more than just his basic swing. At number 6 is Hive Knight, and despite this being a really simple boss, I still find it very enjoyable. Jumping or dashing through his sword swings is just so satisfying, and his other attacks like spawning bees or spawning the things in the air are still really interesting. I don't find the bees to be as annoying as adds during a boss fight, as it's just stuff coming down from the ceiling. Yes, it's still a very easy boss fight, and maybe if it was harder I would not like the bees as much, but I think as the way it is, it's a solid fight. At number 5 is Hornet, and I'll get my one really minor negative out of the way, being spawning stuff in the middle of the arena is kind of annoying, but other than that, I think this is an amazing fight. The throwing the nail and the charging look pretty similar, so you have to react really quickly. She's probably one of the fastest bosses in the entire game, but it's still super fun. I think that the mid-air stall and doing the thing can be really interesting and can keep you on your guard at all times. Not only does this boss have an amazing gameplay loop, but the sound effects are also hilarious, and it just feels like a really cool fight as you fight her multiple times throughout the game. At number 4 is Great Nail Sage Sly, and I think, again, this is an amazing way to use the nail arts. Having all of the charge-ups look the same and having to rely on where he is on the arena to be the tell of what attack he's doing is amazing. I think that his two combos that he has are both really interesting to dodge, one of them being pretty easy to punish and the other can be very deadly if you don't know what you're doing. Both add a lot to the fight and I think are absolutely wonderful. Well, actually my favorite part of the fight is the second phase. Now, I'm not a big fan of desperation phases, but I think having him jump around off the walls and spin at you like Master Yoda is absolutely amazing. I find these attacks to be really consistent to dodge, and my only problem is that it drags out a little bit because sometimes it takes a hard time to hit him because of where he's positioned, but otherwise this is an absolutely amazing and perfect fight. At number 3 is Sisters of Battle, and the jump in quality between Sly and this is astronomical. I still probably would have had vanilla Mantis Lords this high, but adding a third one into the mix to make the fight even more difficult and fast-paced is just wonderful. I think that making it so that when they're on the walls, it's not just free sitting there and healing, and actually having to deal with one of the Mantises still is really interesting. I still find the arena to be a little bit small considering that these guys do full arena-wide attacks, and now there's 3 of them, but other than that, this is an absolutely perfect fight. And probably my favorite part about this fight is that once you kill one of them, it's like you've gotten a lot of pressure off, but you still have to beat the fight. You still have to deal with 2 Mantises at the same time, and then 1 Mantis left at the end. I know this doesn't sound that hard, but after you've been worn down and gotten used to the 3 Mantises, it can be hard to adjust back to 2 or just 1. At number 2 is Pure Vessel, and I love this fight so much. I think the atmosphere is amazing, the slow music paired with one of the hardest bosses in the entire game is just hilarious. I find all of the attacks to be so fun to dodge, and really I have no problems with this fight. I could sit here forever and talk about how this attack is really good, this attack is fun to dodge, but really it's all of them put together. Just how the fight flows and how it plays just feels so good. I think that Pure Vessel is honestly just more of an experience, and it's an absolutely wonderful one at that. At number 1, to probably no one's surprise, is Nightmare King Grim. This is not only my favorite boss in this game, but may potentially be in the running for my favorite boss of all time. It's just perfect. There is not a single thing I can say that's bad about this fight. Everything I've said about these bosses being so fun to fight and feeling so smooth fits here. There's ample time to use spells, there's room to heal every once in a while, none of his attacks feel unfair to deal with, there's plenty of time to do damage, the fight doesn't drag on, there's no ads during the fight. Literally nothing bad I could possibly say about this boss. I think that all of the attacks are really interesting to deal with, and that literally everything is perfect. And as much as I love all the songs on the Hollow Knight soundtrack, this one is by far the best, and it's not even close. Well, with all of these absolutely wonderful bosses and this absolutely wonderful game wrapped up, thank you everybody so much for watching. I hope this video could provide you some entertainment, and I'll see you guys next time. Later.